Hi everyone, welcome to my Shoreline Studio. I'm Sybille Muschik. Behind the camera is Joshua Blanc. What inspires you? Well, lots of things inspire me, but one of the things are artists that have come before, and one of my favorites is Jack Shadbolt. Now, Jack Shadbolt was a very accomplished artist. He was born in 1909, passed away in 1998. And in between, he was a major force in both British Columbia art and, of course, throughout Canada and even the world. He was a renowned teacher as well. He was at the Vancouver School of Art, which later became Emily Carr University. And he had many programs for young people and did a lot of work with young people. I particularly enjoy his symbology and iconography, the colors he used. I relate a lot to his work, mark making and so forth. I have some images to show you to give you an example of the kind of work he was doing. Now, as he was definitely a renowned colorist, you can see the loved yellows and reds and violets and blues. A lot of them are saturated colors. That means they're high intensity. One of his symbols that he used quite extensively are butterflies. And he really messed around with them using lots of symbolic forms, circles and stripes, as you can see in here. I think butterflies often related to his work in the war, where he was a war correspondent. That was the Second World War. And he was, faced with the horror of what was happening at the end of the war particularly. And so the butterfly became a symbol, as it is for palliative care and other organizations, as transformation and changing into, the next realm, if you like. He often used devices, compositional devices, like this cruciform idea, and wrap things up with line and shape. Sometimes he used what I would consider muddy colors, but in order to make something stand out, like his lighter colors, you tone down with neutrals the colors that he wants to enhance and the imagery. So then it becomes more muted in the background. One of my favorites is this boat scene, and we'll be working with that today. Except, if you are inspired by an artist, then use their work as a touch point, to further your own mark making, your own ways of working. We've all learned from people before and use their imagery to, create your own. Nothing has been new, really. We all learn from somebody else or from the history. So I want to introduce to you something called Inovart. This is a type of plate, a Presto foam printing plate is what it is. You can draw in it, you can cut it to shape. It's a little bit more delicate than, say, a plexiglass plate or because it is styrofoam. But you can impress wonderful marks and things into it and then use it as a printing plate, which I just happen to have an example of. Using one of Shadbolt's ideas of the butterfly as a transformative image. And all his butterflies are kind of wonky, so I have followed a little bit on that. But at the same time, I've used some of our local butterflies as a starting point. So here's the positive image, and of course then you have the negative as well that you can use for doing stenciling. A lot of Shadbolt's imagery has some really unusual backgrounds to it because in his case and I don't know whether he did a lot of printmaking, but it was mostly painting. So, but in this case, we're working with gel plates and printmaking. So this is a rub-off sheet. So this is one way of using a rub-off sheet, you know, when you're burring off paint that you have on your brayer. And some of them are really, really interesting. So I've created a 8x10 format, and we're going to start with that today. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll just ink the plate. And we're going to just use a fairly neutral color, but a little bit darker than this one. So I might start maybe with an orange, but we'll add a fair amount of white to it. Now, what do you think of this for a nice container for white? I got carried away again, but hey, it's great. It's Amsterdam as well, but I use a lot of white, so there we go. And we're just going to brayer that out. And I'm not mixing it a lot. We can refer back to Shadbolt's image here. He has these lines in the background. Now this also looks very tribal. If you look closely, you'll see imagery that sort of suggests faces. And some of my work in the last few days working with this idea certainly has accidental images, some which I've enhanced as I see them, and some I've just left alone. Okay, that's a little bit brighter than our print. And in order to get lines, now I played around with pastel, and it's difficult when you're working with a printed page already, because it just doesn't pick it up well enough. And of course you could use graphite pencil, you could use paint, but let's try it this way today. So I'm just going to make some lines. So we'll do our lines negatively. I'm going to do an awful lot of them because I want to remove most of the paint. Okay. Make your lines interesting. You can vary the width. These are nice tools. See, you can make wider ones. You can make really thin ones. You can jiggle them. It sort of suggests water, looking down at it from above, like an aerial view. You can cross over them. That gives you a dimensionality, as if one is in front of the other. So I'm trying to remember that I've got to vary these lines. Now don't forget, paint dries, so do this fairly quickly, and then we'll see how that prints. See, even the back is interesting. If you're doing a booklet, then you'd have a back as well. Now I've cut my sheet to 8x10. You can see there's a bit showing here. Over time, your gel plate will stretch a little bit. And this is Jelly Art's plate. Now look at some of the things that came, how did that happen? I think the paper was a little bit wrinkled, but now we have some really interesting stuff happening in the background. Okay, so that's a good start. Now we have to let this dry, and we need to clean this, so we're going to take a little interlude, and we'll get right back. Okay, so now we have our sheet. It's nice and dry. I haven't really done cleaning too much on this plate, but we're going to do somewhat like a rainbow roll for the next part. We'll brighten things up. Maybe throw a bit of blue in there. These are all Amsterdam paints as usual. My pretty standard paints for a lot of things now. Okay, let's roll that out. I don't want these paints to mix too much. If we mix violet with the yellow, we're going to get a neutral, right? So and with the blue, of course, it becomes green, but that's okay. So our boats are going to be leaves, because that's what I relate to. We're always about our local flora and fauna. Just a little bit on the edge here. Okay, now leaves. We're just going to place some leaves here. These will be our, and of course we have lots of boats on the lake here, so certainly that kind of symbology works here. And my leaves are nice and deteriorating. Some of them are even hard to pry off the plate. So here's all our sort of boat shapes. Now we just need a sheet, an extra sheet here, just to damp things down a little bit. You don't want to take too much color off, but isn't that interesting? We'll use that later. All right, now let's try for our main sheet here. I don't think there's any real orientation at this point as to what's up and down. And now, I don't know if you remember our little trick, but you do this and then you get that negative outline because the leaves are blocking off the paint. So then you lift and get rid of all the leaves. And to get the detail of the leaves, just remove them. Get this one off this way. And then use your little barren to get those details back. All right. Always love the big reveal. So good, we have our boat shapes. A little obscure up here, but that's okay. We have a butterfly to put there. So let's use this, see if it will transfer to the ghost plate here. We'll just let that sit for a minute, maybe. No, it's not too bad. picking up some of it. Okay, so here's a ghost print with some of the detail of the leaves. Now that's looking very bright. See the need for having that underpainting on here? It's much more, how shall I put it, refined. You know, it doesn't look so garish. So, looks good. But we'll work with that too. Okay, next up is getting our butterfly on here. And that's going to be a tricky part, so we'll take an interlude and we will be right back. Well, you can't believe how much fun I had with all these crazy butterflies, but okay, so I learned a little trick. First with the butterfly, I just rolled ink on it, put it on the plate, and then printed that. And that didn't work all that great. Then I tried just printing it negatively with this one. And then adding the butterfly to that. And that worked pretty good. And then and I'll show you the next part. So here's some of the crazy, we'll show these at the end. And this has got about 10 layers of stuff on it. You probably wouldn't believe it, but it's there. And it just ended up, I covered up some really nice leaves and things. So sometimes things just, no matter how hard you try, and then when you give up, suddenly it clicks. So we ended up with that at the end. Then using that idea, I started, you know, and then I inked the middle to just help with getting that little center body in. And this was just a rub-off sheet underneath. And then this one is the Oriental paper, and it was something I printed that had black on it. So it has this nice black background. And I just used the butterfly, I think just like that, and didn't, you know, just used it as a mask, and it came out really interesting. So look at some of these colors. So I love that. Okay. So here we have more of, I didn't put the butterfly in this. This is more like the boat shapes. And this is almost iridescent without using iridescent paints. There are faces in here if you look really closely. So there's some weird things happening there. Then I did a print, and when I was taking it off the gel plate, it tore on me. So Carolyn Dubie has this wonderful oops thing. You know, you use an oops as an opportunity to do something creative. So my oops ended up being a collage, and all these lovely pieces just sort of ended up collage-like. And then we have this cruciform compositional device in there negatively, which I thought was kind of interesting. So that was fun. Okay. So now on to our butterfly here. So now we have to figure out probably our blue-violet combination might work the best against that yellow background. So you've got a complement, and you've got some of the blue in here and the complement. So I think that should be about where it should go. Now we're missing, and this is my fate, I think, to not always have a missing antenna. Let's do a little bit of the blue. And this is the tricky part I was telling you about. And you know how you discover tricks is you work and work and work, and then keep your eyes open and your mind engaged, and things will happen. You know, get down into your studio and work. Don't think about it, just do it. I think I want to add a little bit more blue to that, lighter blue. There we go. Now this can't be too thick either, because you want the line work that's on the butterfly to show up. So if it's too thick, it will just sort of creep into all the lines and it won't print. Okay, so then you place, well, it doesn't matter how we place it here, because except it's, you know, needs to be inked. So you place it down, and then you use your tissue paper, and I know Josh is going to have a conniption over this. Okay, so you remove everything outside the butterfly. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? We don't want to print the rest of the stuff. We just want to print what's under the butterfly. And this tissue paper is delicate enough, it's not going to mess with anything. Sometimes leaves a little bit of texture behind that the gel plate will print. So we will see. Okay. So you see what happens is that now we have taken off the paint, and the lines actually, it's not like an intaglio where it's the lines that are dark. This is negative lines. So now we're going to print. Now, I hope everybody's holding their breath and crossing their toes and fingers and things and hoping for the best here. Now, because this was a rub-off sheet, there's all sorts of interesting wrinkles. This paper is totally plasticized. It was just a piece of bond paper to begin with, but it suffered a new life. All right. Well, we could have gone a little bit more intense, and we're going to do that. But look at the lines, that is really interesting. Okay, so we're going to use black. And some Amsterdam. Okay, we're going to do this. And then we'll really impress it on here. And we'll take everything else off. Now, I'm taking a paper towel in this case because I don't want a lot of this showing. And I might even wet one. We'll get this butterfly on yet. Okay, let's see how it looks. Now that should do it. And again, printing, lining up to some degree. Yeah, this should do the trick. As I said, you know, you have to do this sometimes. Ah, okay. And that's good. And there's our butterfly and the boats. And we haven't got any faces in here. We have our lines. It's a bit mucky, but you get the idea. You could do more layers. You know, you can put more butterflies, more boats. There's all sorts of things you can do, as I showed you in the earlier pieces. So give this a shot. It's lots of fun. It's a really creative way to work. Oh, we've got the ghost print too. All right, let's work with that. Wonder if that's dried already. I think it's dried. We're going to need some medium. And we'll show that at the ghost print at the end. So I can just put the medium on there. And then we will place, this one might be, is a little bit brighter. And we'll print over some of those white areas. it's going to take some time. So we'll show it at the end. So this is, like I said, it's a lot of fun. Try some of these ways of mark making. Do try this styrofoam stuff. This Inovart styrofoam, and it does make wonderful lines and things. So you can do drawing and mark making, all those lovely things that happen. And we just need to let this dry for maybe an hour or so, and then we'll show it at the end, as I said. Okay, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun as usual. Give it a shot, and show your work if you can in the Jelly Plate Printing Enthusiasts. And there's a monotype group as well. You know, show some of your work in there, and let's do art together. Bye for now. And as usual, I'm looking for my Beren, and it's off. It's gone on a walkabout. Where did it go, Josh?
I don't know.
I need either. Did it fall over? Nope. It's under here somewhere.
Goodness.
That's really strange. Okay. Whatever. We'll rub our fingers to the bone here and try and get the image. Maybe it fell.
Oh, there it is. Under the tissue paper.
Under the tissue paper. Oh, there we are. Okay, good. It did go for a walkabout.